actually got the ball. Good evening, Tottenham fans worldwide, and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur and your Tuesday Hotspur Social, where myself, Jack, Johnny, and Sam will be debating some topics that we're bringing to the table. What we're going to be debating, just a quick run through, is do Spurs prioritise giving the youngsters that they sign more minutes and developing them over youngsters that have come through the academy? And then I'm probably going to answer why I think it's wrong. Also, we're going to discuss a little bit about Christian Romero, picture back in training, which we'll all agree is great news. But the big question is, does he walk straight into the lineup, or does he have to fight for his place like everybody else? We'll talk a little bit about the fullback situation, Djed Spence emergence. What does that mean for Pedro Porro's future? And we'll also talk about Bentancur's new contract and maybe what that signals for Bissouma moving forward at Tottenham Hotspur. So plenty of good stuff to talk about. Of course, many ways you guys can get involved at home. You know, when we're live, you can sit there in the comments, get your questions in and stuff like that. If we're done, don't be afraid to get your comments in underneath. If you're watching this on playback, we'll respond to as many of them as we can. And if you do want to judge us on the merit, see how this content goes, and you do enjoy it, I want to throw support our way, you can do that by grabbing a membership, hitting that like button, or feel free to super chat if there's something you feel strongly about that you think we need to address and we're glossing over. Now, we are pushed for time this evening, so quickly I'm going to welcome people in the chat, and then we'll get straight into it. We have Invert the Wing says, have a good show. Don't forget to smash a like in on the way. Really appreciate that. Ravin Raju says, like smashed on the way in. Big up. Really appreciate that. Super Spurs TV evening, everyone. Big up panel. Big up chat. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe on your way in, folks. You guys doing our job for us. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Davey Hall says, enough respect to all. Come on, you Spurs. We've got Dermatron in the house. Good evening, guys. 4 in a row coming tomorrow night. Let's go. Can't wait. He's absolutely pumped up. We've got Steve from Stateside Footy. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I hope you're enjoying the day. Looking forward to this discussion. Big up, Steve. Good to see you in the house. We've also got Thompson223. Yes, lads. Good to see you. PTM Productions says Spurs were absolutely doing the right thing. They could get the next Saliba or Rudiger or Allison, etc. We've got John Bostich in the house. It's maybe not Spurs, it's Sancho. Anytime, think what you are wishing for. Then we also have Ryan in the house. Good evening, Ryan. Good to see you. And then we also have Trinidad. Djed Spence can become prime bail. So as he's disproved all the doubters, allow the other homegrown quality a shot to push the new signings. Just play Pedro Porro right mid against appropriate opposition. But you know what? A lot of people, and I've seen a lot of articles and received a few texts, people comparing Brennan Johnson to the next Gareth Bale, which I think personally is going over the top. But look, you know, each to their own. And then we've got Spurs TV gifted out 5 Irish Hotspur memberships. Really appreciate the support, brother. Very, very kind of you, Jack. Who's the lucky recipients?
Spurs GC TV, Matthew Ball, Charles Ingram, Dalian White, and then Sharaith all been gifted memberships.
Make sure,
Super Spurs, thank you so much.
Make sure if you're in the chat, make sure, or you're watching it back after, make sure you thank Super Spurs TV in the chat. Fair play to you for sharing the love, my man. Really do appreciate it. But look, Jack, let's not waste the people's evening at home or the guys on the panel. Very gracious to give up the time. Let's get straight into it, my man.
Yep, let's get straight into it. And the question that you can see in the title is the one that we're going to get started off with. This kind of came from maybe a recent sort of, I think, discussion Dave might have had with someone, I believe, Stateside Footy. I think it came from in the chat. And he was saying Spurs seem to prioritize, at least Dave is starting to think that Spurs seem to prioritize giving minutes to players we've already spent money on rather than those that are just coming through our academy, i.e. our homegrown talent. For example, during preseason, Bergvall was given a chance over Jamie Donnelly, who played as a left back instead of playing in his ideal position, or even Alfie Devine. Bergvall was given minutes over. We've also played Archie Gray, you know, a very talented midfielder at center back instead of Alfie Dorrington, who we know is a very talented center back coming through the academy. We've given minutes to Matisse Tell instead of Dane Scarlett or the likes of Will Lancashire. And we just brought through Antonin Kinski instead of giving Josh Keeley a chance, or even the likes of a Luka Gunter. So do you think Spurs, start with you, Johnny, on this? Do you agree with Dave? Maybe Spurs are prioritizing the newer signings, the big money signings, if you will, over the homegrown talent?
I don't think. I know. It's plain as the nose on my face. I'll take you back. Everton, I can't remember if it was home or away last season. And Ange was asked about our youth and our academy, because our academy was doing fantastically well. And Ange came out with immortal lines. None of the players are good enough to play for Spurs. They're nowhere near. All right. That upset a lot of people at the club because they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, 2 years finding these next youth players. Imagine you're a youth player and you hear that, right? Imagine, right? The club are trying to get people to sign, and you got this guy turning around and saying stuff like that. So I'll fast forward to the Man City game at home, where he had that rant. And if you remember the rant, if you want to play it back, he said, I've been aware this week of many things inside and outside the club over this past week that's made me realize a few things, right? And that was basically, you need to embrace the kids. You need to understand that the kids have got an important part to play in the development of this club moving forward. He didn't like it. Funny though, just after that, suddenly Mikey Moore starts getting a few minutes. A couple of players start getting minutes, and Sheffield United, I was there, Sheffield United away, where he got his minutes. Fast forward to pre-season. Again, more words are said, and we see Jamie Donnelly playing at left back. I mean, listen, when I spoke to his dad,
disgrace.
Yeah, when I spoke to his dad, going back, I think it was Fulham Cup game, under 21s, right? I said to him, Jamie's good enough. He said, no, we need to go out on loan and get the game time. And I was thinking, really? I think he's good enough. No, we need to go out and game time. And when I saw him playing at left back, I understood exactly why. And again and again. And you could say the same of all these youth players. Anyway, Then we had this conversation where I am having conversations with fans who said, oh, yeah, so you know more than Ange, do you? I said, I didn't say I know more than Ange. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, this is the best group of kids that I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm old enough to have seen a few kids come through. And unless there's an injury crisis, these kids ain't getting any game time whatsoever. And sure enough, they weren't. And we then saw what happened. The injury crisis. When you got someone like Djed Spence who can't get a game, and Reguilon who will not play those two, even when desperately needed, do you honestly think he's going to play these kids? So we then started to see the kids, and everyone started to talk about, well, forget the ones on loan. We all know about the Abbots and the Jamie Donnellys and the Keeleys and the likes. Okay. Ashley Phillips, who I felt should have been ahead of Dorrington to actually stay. He's 19 years of age, had a full season playing just about every game. Yeah. I think, he should have 100% be kept. He's 6'5", quick, powerful, and he would have maybe learned something. Anyway, that's by the by. So when we started to see these players come on, and I'm seeing them coming on the bench, the Callum Muluesis, the Ajay, and the rest, Kasanov. I mean, I could go through them all. And I was going, how many of them are going to actually come on? How many of them are going to come on? We saw Will Lancashire thrown into the Lions pit, which is Galatasaray, probably one of the hardest places for any professional football to go to. He had a good game, and then unfortunately got sent off. It happens, kids. We've seen better players than him get sent off and still not get thrown onto the wire. And yet the kid can't even get a game against Tamworth. Right? Look, it's
so it's more Ange, you think, ignoring the.
Well, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I just don't think the manager. Look, people can come at me. They can say what they like. I just don't believe that this is a manager that's interested in embracing our academy kids. Right?
Okay.
And
I disagree, Johnny.
Huh?
I disagree.
I know you disagree, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing.
No, I'll tell you why I disagree, Johnny, is because simple reasons.
You think Mikey Moore, so just before you finish, right, just to finish, right, I said when I saw Mikey Moore delete his goal from Instagram, right, on his Instagram account, his debut goal, and then you saw him a few days later delete his X account. I said, I guarantee you, I bet you he doesn't play another minute for Spurs this season, or he's been told. This is just summation, right? This is just pure guesswork. It's not knowing anything on this particular topic. I know other stuff, but not this. That he won't be playing, or he's been told. And I'll tell you, in the Ipswich game, when the last sub came on, I looked to that bench and he did not look happy. I can tell you that. He did not look happy at all. And in the final whistle, when all the players came over, he looked sad and miserable. And there's a reason for that. I don't know whether he's been told you're going to go back to the under-21s or you're not going to get minutes anymore. I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. He was chased by half of Europe before he signed that contract. And there's get-out clauses in that contract. And, you know, I don't know. If I was him and his family, maybe I'd be thinking, it's time for him to go. He will be thinking time for him to go, not me.
Look, where I sort of disagree with you, Johnny, is look, I actually agree with a lot of the sentiment you talk about when it comes to you, which I'll go through in a minute. Where I disagree with you and where I'm sort of trying to wrestle it up in my own head to come to where I think the lie blames is, to be fair to Postecoglou, he has given more academy players over his 2 years here time on the pitch than anybody else since Pochettino.
Forced or willingly?
Look, I'm going to come on to that.
Well, that's the difference.
There has come a situation around it where the likes of Ajayi and that, I think, to a certain degree, forced. I think Mikey Moore, Will Lancashire, I think we're always going to get games in the Europa League. So there is an element of both, to be fair there, Johnny. I agree with you. But I always hark back to Tim Sherwood and what he said about Harry Kane, almost a disrespect thrown his way because he came through the academy, where I think Leicester City had a bid in of like 200,000 for Harry Kane. And Daniel Levy, Tim Sherwood selected him, said he's in the starting lineup for the Premier League. And then Levy said, what you doing? There's a bid accepted for Leicester City. He's on his way out to football club. And Tim Sherwood said, no, you're making a mistake. And he was like, but we've paid 20-odd million for Sadado. I want him to be played. I think there's still an element of that going on at this football club to a large degree. And that's where I don't really blame too many of these managers to a certain degree, because I still think there's still that outlook on it at the football club. Now, when it comes into the players itself, I'm going to start with someone like Jamie Donnelly, for instance, right? Now, when it comes to Jamie Donnelly, I think it's been very unfair in terms of like Jamie Donnelly, who was arguably our most creative player last season at the football club in all age groups. People want to talk about the likes of Will Lancashire, who scored goals last year. They want to talk about other players. But he was the guy in that under-21s who produced the magic, who could produce goals from, out of absolutely nowhere, who drove this team forward, who was the catalyst in unlocking all these defenses. You look at his games at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against Man City, he came off with De Bruyne-like highlights. He didn't even get a chance to show what he can bring to the team, especially in a team that were desperately lacking creativity throughout last season and even large parts of this one.
After Lascelles was sold. Yeah,
exactly. But then why come to preseason? Are we shoehorning him in at left back? Straight away, you're telling the youngster, we don't really care what you really have to offer. We're stuck here. You're going to play here. You're not. And that's just showing down like that. You're not really going to get an opportunity in a position further up the field where you shine to be able to show what you can bring to this team. And then you look at the large voids of creativity or Madison being on and off it and the injury crisis we've had this year. You're telling me someone like Donnelly couldn't come in and offer something completely different in terms of what we've seen him do at the under-21, spray balls about from different angles, something this forward line really sort of lacks. I'm sorry. I think it's disrespectful. And the only reason why Bergvall walks in here, and don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic player, but I'd argue I think Donnelly's a much better player and has a much higher ceiling. The only reason why he walks in here and gets minutes in his preferred position to show what he can do is simply because we spent money on him. Then you go into the likes of...
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I would just say this one thing, right? I do not... Excuse me, I just had a chocolate. I do not believe that this guy has any interest in the kids fundamentally on our academy. I have not seen once in all the time I've been to under 18s and under 21s, have I seen that guy down at a bloody game? Ever.
No, fair.
More than anyone else. Why?
Fair. No, fair. Look, I think it's a fair point. I think, it goes back to the likes of Wenger. Jose Mourinho to a degree. Alex Ferguson always went down to academy games, always kept their eye on players. I do agree with you that that's lacking at Tottenham Hotspur. But again, is it a club directive that, we're not interested in what we're producing out in the academy? I think Jack's going to make a point in a little while that, they just see the academy as profit to be able to, Jack's going to explain the financials around, players coming through. But I want to go into, the rest of some of the players and continue my point. Then you've got the likes of Archie Gray, a midfielder. Now, don't get me wrong. He played in the back line for Leeds. He's proven that he can do it. But he comes in, he's being played at centre-back ahead of someone like Alfie Dorrington. For me, again, it's another example that the club do prioritise playing players that they've played for over someone that's come through the academy. You go on to Matisse Tell, which is actually what sort of sparked this question for me. Getting minutes over academy strikers like Dane Scarlett or Will Lancashire. Will Lancashire had one opportunity out in Galatasaray. Apart from that, he hasn't really had any other opportunity to shine. And what we've seen out in that game was a guy that was thrown into the lion's den in an environment that some of the senior players couldn't even handle. He showed that he can score goals, but then also showed maybe the naivety and the immature side. But you don't banish the lad after that. You still got to try and develop him and give him more opportunities. You look at Dane Scarlett. Look at the impact he's had. He's had more impact up front in the games that we've seen than what Matisse Tell has from Bayern Munich. And the guy's not even a striker, by the way. He's a winger, in my opinion. Great. Again, it's another example, and there's no guarantee this guy's staying here. And all you're doing is potentially developing him for someone else. That's the risk. Why aren't we putting more development into Dane Scarlett, who is a more natural striker? We've seen straight away off the bench against Ipswich into a position to be able to win the header for Kudu to go on and win. Matisse Tell couldn't do that all game. You go back to one of the Europa League games where we're looking for a goal. He's in the box where you want your striker to be, getting on the end of it. He's also had a couple of other assists this season. And I think when I look at Tottenham Hotspur in general, we are one of the only few clubs in world football that doesn't actually give our academy players a fair chance to shine. And look, the reality is, I'm going to be a bit fair here. We don't know if there is some youngsters inside the club maybe pushing for moves or loan moves across the course of the summer and maybe trying to look after their own development.
They will now.
Yeah, but the reality is, though, if you see players like Gray, Bergvall, Tell, players like that all coming in and getting opportunities ahead of you in their preferred positions, why wouldn't you push for a loan move? You're too good for the under-21s. You're not going to get minutes here at senior level because you've come through the academy. So the reality is, if you want to get out and develop and play first-team football, you're going to have to push for your loan move. And I think, we're missing a golden opportunity really here to really mature and nurture our own talent. Now, I do have a wrap-up point. I'm getting there. Just look at the class of 91 at Manchester United, for instance, right? They won the FAU Cup. And at the time, when you won that was looked as a prestigious competition, and automatically you've got some great youngsters that you need to look at and sort of develop. They were brought into that Man United first team, and they formed the backbone of a successful squad for the next 15 years. These players set the standards, drove their Man United forward, and also kept new signings in check by making sure that anyone that had come in would actually add value to what they're doing, or they would be pushed out of the football club. And I think at Tottenham Hotspur, this is where we're missing the opportunity. We have a similar opportunity here at Spurs to do the same. Yeah. Our youngsters have won trophies in 3 consecutive age groups. They're the best in the country. They've done it at not only under 17s, under 18s, and under 21s. And we have the best opportunity in my lifetime that I've seen to create something very similar to what Man United have done. A core group of homegrown players who genuinely love and support this club the way a fan does, that could drive the standards in the dressing room for years to come, because they really care about this football club and wanting it to be successful. And I think having a dressing room like that in football, it sets the foundation for success. It makes any manager's job easier when they come in, knowing that they have a squad that's self-regulated by players who are passionate and committed to the football club. But also, these young players already have the hunger and desire to win, as proven by the achievements that are laid out, that, there could be a difference when it comes to developing a competitive edge and a competitive squad for trophies. It's the difference maker, in my opinion. And also, lastly, when it comes to squad registration, you look at it, for instance, this year, we registered 4 keepers, and then, we're registering a squad of 23 players. So in effect, your 3 keepers you're not really going to be using. So in effect, you're actually only going into a European squad with 20 players really available to you. And again, if we really want to go and compete on trophies consistently on all 4 fronts every single season, and I keep saying this homegrown part of the squad has to be developed, has to be nurtured and brought through, so that then you can actually build a proper 25-man squad and actually really go and compete. And that's been a big issue at Tottenham Hotspur for quite some time. And I keep hearing, but it's not the right time. I'm sorry, if Man City can go on and win titles and trophies and still bring through their own youngsters, no excuse. Clubs are getting relegated and still bringing through their youngsters, no excuse. You know, every other club around world football are bringing through youngsters, giving them opportunity, bar Tottenham Hotspur. And I think it's about what, I think, to be honest, it's to do with what you're going to allude to, Jack. And I think it's disgusting,
Well,
actually, because I think we're missing a real opportunity here to really solve a core part of the problem and produce our own 91.
I think it's like a two-parter, though, and I think we should probably bring Sam into it. The two-parter being, do you actually think, Sam, that, you know, the homegrown talent are being ignored and that, you know, the other signings are being prioritized? And then the other part to it is, whose fault is that? Is that like a Daniel Levy directive, or is that like an Ange directive? You know, Dave and Jonny are kind of at splits with that. So, Sam, you know, kind of your thoughts on those two things. You know, first part being, do you actually think maybe the academy kids have been ignored this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that last season they were ignored as well, as Johnny's touched on.
Is that Ange's fault? Is that the board's fault? Where do you kind of lie on that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. You know, because I can see why there will be pressure on Ange from inside the club to play young players like Mikey Moore, for example, because you want to keep, you know, the grubby mitts of Europe off of him, right? But my reasoning behind why I think it's Ange refusing to play these players is because we've gone through the worst two injury crisis in Spurs history that I can remember. You know, maybe there's been more over the time that I've supported, maybe before I've supported, but obviously maybe there's a recency bias. But I can't remember, at least in the last decade, a time where you're missing 3 centre backs, 3 attacking options, multiple midfielders, your goalkeeper. I mean, there was a game where we had 14 players out, right? And I know that, you know, maybe my point for that specific game doesn't really count because he was playing young players in those games. But, you know, to the point of, you know, last season we were begging him to play young players. You know, people who, myself included, other than knowing the names of these young players, had never seen these young players play. And, you know, we aren't there every day to see how good these players are. But to Johnny's point, as someone who goes to, not myself, as Jonny goes to the youth games, he's never seen Ange there. And, you know, maybe he goes to the training, you don't know, but you can't get a good feel. Yeah, you can't get a good feel for these young players without seeing them in game environments. I fully believe that. So, you know, people were saying, yeah, but it's a risk to not play them. But we've, for years, maybe not myself personally, but fans for years have said, we've got a whole host of players who aren't good enough to be at the club. We've given them countless opportunities. Obviously, in the last year, quite a few of those players have been moved on. But last year, we still had a decent chunk of players who were there that shouldn't have been. And yet we still didn't see any young players getting moments. And I wasn't asking for, you know, Mikey Moore to be played at age 16, because those sort of things just don't really happen. I know that you've seen Yamal in Barcelona tearing it up. But I mean, let's be honest, Yamal's a generational talent. We maybe Moore is as well, you know? But circumstances dictated for me that the youth should have been given a chance last season and they weren't. And then to pull it back to your question about or your points about playing players who we've bought that are young rather than investing the time into your own players, look at what it meant to the fans, myself included. And then, you know, there was a couple of trolls on the fan cam I did after the game where we beat Elfsborg 3-0, right? And all the young academy kids scored. I was genuinely close to tears, right? I was so happy and so proud, having not only been at the game, but to experience these young players score for their club. Look, no one want, like, these are the dreams that all Spurs fans would have had growing up, to one day don the lily white and score not only in a European competition but in front of your home fans. And I feel like it means so much more to the fans, the clubs, the players, for players who have come through all the ranks. Even the likes of Brandon Austin, for example. I'm not saying that Austin should be starting games. I'm just saying, he's been at the club for 18 years or whatever. To finally get his debut, be given the chance. These guys are bleeding lily white, right? And in a time where, people have complained a lot that, go back to the North London derby, for example, you're saying this is a fucking North London derby and look at the performance we're putting in. Arsenal knew what it meant. We didn't. I'm not saying that these young players should necessarily be thrown into games like the Arsenal game just because they know what it means, but they should be being integrated more. And as you've said, Lancashire, he played pretty well in that Galatasaray game. Much better than Bergvall, I may add. They're not the same position. I'm just making the point. Like, after that game, I thought to myself, to be honest, and I'll admit it, I thought we need to loan Bergvall out because he does not look cut out for this right now.
But why is it then that they're willing to give Bergvall more of those minutes and give Bergvall more patience than they would a Tyrese Hall, or they would, anybody else, that's technically academy proven, or for example, even Matisse Tell, right? They're more willing to give Matisse Tell a lot of time, a lot of minutes instead of Dane Scarlett, for example. Like, what is the benefit to them to give Matisse Tell minutes instead of Dane Scarlett?
I think there's a number of reasons, and it's not that I don't necessarily agree with these reasons, right? I can see both sides of it. Like, for example, for Tell, Gray, and Bergvall, obviously they've all played at different levels, but they have all played at least one season of men's football, right? Gray was starting consistently, Bergvall was starting consistently, Tell's been at Bayern for the last 2 years. And has had experience at the highest level, so I can understand it. And then you want to tie that in with the fact that Tell could be 50-60 million if we buy him. They've spent 40 million on Archie Gray. The club are going to want return on investment, and from an Ange point of view, he's looking at players that he believes he can trust, or at least that's how I see it. But I think that people maybe are getting a bit ahead of themselves, myself included, when you the cameo of not Djed Spence, sorry, of Dane Scarlett against Ipswich, right? He gets that assist, and I've said in group chats, for some reason, out of all the players that we've had come through at Spurs, I don't know why, but Dane Scarlett is so high up on my list of players I really, really, really wanted to work for. But we don't, like, there was moments in that game, in the Ipswich game, where he was played through and he just showed a lack of pace, maybe, to break away from the defenders who'd been playing the whole game, and he'd only been on for about 5 or 10 minutes. And there's obviously reasons that we can't see on the pitch as to why these players aren't being given time. But I think he's played 58 minutes, Scarlett, and he's got 2 assists and a goal. Obviously, the quality of opposition against Elfsborg for 2 of those goal contributions is a factor, right? But I can understand why the fans are wanting him to play, but they also, you do need to try and, like, they're clearly thinking that Tell has the ability to be one of our first team players going forward. Maybe he's not quite at the level now, but you're also forgetting, yes, he's 19, but he's come to a new league. He clearly speaks English, but it's not his natural language. It's a whole new country, new league, new teammates, new system. Everything's new. It's going to take him a while to get off the ground. And his goal against Aston Villa was instinctual. And I think that shows you a lot of what potentially he can bring, because he's got that striker's instinct to flick the ball towards goal. He knows where the goal is, and he had chances in that Ipswich game and the United game. He just maybe he snatched at them.
Sorry.
Go on.
I'll give mine quickly. I do think it's sadly a bit of a dark, twisted financial kind of reasoning behind it all. I do agree with Dave's theory and Johnny's theory that homegrown talent are being ignored in some sort of sense in in prioritizing the people that they're actually bringing in for real money. And I think the point is that if you have these homegrown talents coming through, in your best interest for kind of financial reasons. You want them to be playing games. You want them to basically have their value be as high as it possibly can in the case that you do have to sell them, or in the case that they do want to leave, which is the case for a lot of young academy talents. They kind of get fed up. Might be like a Noni Madueke situation. Might be like plenty of other kids that are just like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get my chance, or I'm hungry enough that I do want to just, leave the club and maybe I'll come back at another point or come back to the Premier League some other time. And so you want in that situation to make sure that they are at their highest possible value. And so it makes sense to then loan out the homegrown players because they're not going to have the best value. They're just playing under 21 games and are sort of just living off a reputation and living off of, what other people are saying about them. You want them to be on TV, playing on League One games, playing in championship games, playing abroad if need be, and garnering that attention, and also getting stats and getting experience and all those things that can lead to a £30 million, £40 million transfer that could be pure profit on the books for Daniel Levy and the rest of the club. And we all know they don't need too much more financial wiggle room, but if they can have it, they certainly will take advantage of it. And Spurs aren't really the club that's been producing homegrown talents that they can sell for 20 or 30 million. And I imagine that's what they're trying to switch gears towards, is to be able to produce homegrown talents that they could produce like a Bukayo Saka, they could produce like a Harry Kane, they could produce another Mikey Moore. But if they don't, at least they know they have plenty of guys they could sell for 10, 20 million. And that all gets chalked down as pure profit. Yeah. And then the other ones that they bring in, like Archie Gray, Bergvall, Matisse Tell, they're also just young enough that they didn't have to really push the boat out, to really sign super expensive guys, but they know they can still develop them at the club. It's like they've kind of done both really here. Spurs have brought in young players to develop, but then they've also just sort of shifted out their own homegrown players so that they can basically write them down as pure profit. I think it's kind of a dark, twisted kind of financial reason behind it all.
But the thing is, what I saw a question, is some of these, you can make the case for Archie Gray, to be fair. But is any of the other young talents we've brought in better than what we've produced at under 21 level? That's come true, especially from last season. I mean, Johnny, I'll hand it over to you. What's your thoughts on that? Because I'm not quite so sure. Look, I think Jack's absolutely spot on. There's a case for Man City. A lot of people wonder how they balance the books. They sell a lot of their academy talents on for, money, and it's all pure profit when it comes to financial reasons and stuff like that. But, I guess it comes down to quality, Jack, or Johnny. I think, the club probably look at it, that the players they're buying in are maybe a lot more quality than what we've got, which I don't think necessarily is the case.
Look, I saw someone said, Noni Madueke, he went for like 30 million. Look, is that what you want to see? Do you want to actually see all our talent just leave? Because that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Right? The whole idea is to have a pathway. And if they don't believe that there's a pathway or an opportunity, they're going to go. It's as simple as that. And their agents will encourage them to go, especially when they're getting offers from Germany, the Dortmunds and the like. And then we'll be looking back on it. Instead of 2 years' time, 18 months' time, look at this player that's come through at the club, we'll be looking out to Germany or wherever, and we'll be saying, could have been us. And listen, I'm not going to say we produced a whole load of kids previously, because we bloody well haven't.
But we don't. That's my point. That's the whole point, Johnny. We're one of the only clubs that don't.
Yeah.
For instance, we're looking to go and spend money on Dibbling, 40-odd million from Southampton. I'm not being funny. How do you know Jamie Donnelly isn't better at this level than Dibbling? The only difference is they've given Dibbling a chance. We haven't.
Well, this is the whole point. Players don't give it. I mean, look at Miley. Miley came at Newcastle. He only got a chance because of an injury crisis. The Man United boys, chances. Mainu, they only got chances through injuries. The history is riddled with managers that declared they found this wonder talent. They didn't. Listen, no manager wants to lose his job, but he's going to risk it on a kid just to give a kid a chance. It's as simple as that, right? It's about, they got their own ego and they got their job to think about. The last thing they're thinking about is a kid getting a kid minutes unless that kid is going to come in and affect the game. And yes, the jump between academy level and men's football is huge. I mean, as good as Jamie was and is, it took him months before he got up to speed with League One. Okay, took him like 4 months. But no, look at him now. You know. But I just look. I actually think Bergvall is an unbelievable talent. As soon as I saw him, QPR first game pre-season, I was raving about him. And you know, people said, "Oh, you're going over the top." I still stand by that, even when he was having a bad game, as you said, against Galatasaray. But for me, we are still looking to acquire youth. You know, we signed Mason Melia from Ireland, right? Who is probably one of the hottest prospects in Irish football ever, right?
And he's been told he's coming into the first team, by the way. That's why he signed for Tottenham. I'll have to put that out there. Yeah. Whether he is or not is going to be a different story altogether.
But you know, we're looking to sign the best 15 to 19-year-olds, but unless you have a manager like Pochettino who's willing to embrace them and bring them forward and mix them up. Look, the old adage, you know, you win nothing with kids, is balanced with the fact that you can win something with kids as long as you've got experience mingled in to bind it all together. And, you know, I just think, look, I think the kids are really good. I personally thought, most of these kids are 18 months away from proving themselves and coming in to having an effect on the club per se. But if they look and they see that there's no chance of ever getting through, they're going to leave. Romain Mundle set the ball rolling, when he left. And a really good player, one I really, really liked, a real good talent. Went to Belgium, came back very quickly. They're not stupid. They know how to manipulate the system. And then the alarm bells rang. And we started pushing out the boat with the wages and what we were offering to entice these kids to stay. But I don't know. When I look at the Will Lancashire thing for Tamworth, for example, why are you not playing him for Tamworth? How can you say that he's good enough to play Galatasaray and represent the club in a European game away from home, but he can't play at home away against Tamworth? It doesn't all register. It doesn't balance out. There's no truth to it. And I find it infuriating. I'm not going to sit here and tell you all these kids are ready to come and displace every player in that team, because that's absolute nonsense. But there are players that, given the opportunity, I think could take it. The problem we've got now is, well, some would say it's not a problem, but with all the players coming back, the Odebergs, the Timo Werners, the Solanke, and so on and so on and so on, Richarlison, who's going to be left out? That's going to be the big question. Who's not even going to make the bench who would be considered 2 months ago as a starter, right? Who's not even going to be making that bench? Because there will be players when they come back. Look, let's be serious, right? They have got no interest now on anything. The club has absolutely no interest. Every single thing now is geared up for one thing and one thing only, and that's the Europa League. Nothing else counts right now. And I think all of the injuries that are coming back and everything, again, is just geared up to that first and foremost. No risks. We need to gear up to have how many games would that be? 2, 4, 6. Is it 8 games left if you make it to the final, or is it 7?
7.
7. 7 games left, right? Those are the most important 7 games in the last 10 years. Well, since the cup final, because let's be honest, if somehow or other we win the Europa League, it's a massive sliding doors moment. Suddenly we're making 70, 80 million pound because the money this year is off the clock. We can attract players that we wouldn't normally get, so on and so on, yada, yada, yada. But if we don't, then we're going to be in a position, Dave, which is going to be much, much worse, which is no European football, which will mean the kids will never see the light of day.
No, agreed. Agreed. And I think, getting some sort of European football, even if it's Europa Conference League through the league or whatever, is very important because,
Correct.
the one thing I was looking forward to about the Europa League this season was seeing some of the youngsters in action. And, seeing Mikey Moore in action during the tough spell was something that did give me a highlight. Seeing Will Lancashire score his first senior goal is a highlight of the season. Seeing Ajayi come on and make the impact he has been a highlight of the season. Seeing Dane Scarlett pop in, with the difficult loan spells he's had, making an impact has been a highlight. And I think, many people, that's one thing a lot of people clung on to through the tough times. And that's why I do think, trying to be in all 4 competitions is very important. But just where I'm worried about where we're missing the trick is, we're going down one sort of way of recruiting where we seem to be going and trying to snap up what we think is some of the best youngsters around Europe, which I'm okay at doing. But when we've got a manager screaming for leadership qualities, all the fan base can see we need experience. When you've got academy players that have come through the way they have, right now, are we making the best use of our transfer budget? And that's where my concern comes in. I'm not being funny, but we don't know. And it's all hearsay. Equally, people say, again, David, you don't know. But the thing is, from what I've watched of Donnelly last year, he could have made an impact when we were going through our troubles, so far this season, and especially in terms of going forward. If he would have been. And I just think, instead of spending all this money, why not look at some of our own? I think it's important in terms of going forward. I wouldn't be sitting here pushing it. But the fact is, we've got, there's probably 10 players people could pick from the academy. But realistically, if you can get 4 or 5 of them through, you solve your homegrown problem going forward. You solve a massive problem going forward. And you can create something that Man United have done in years gone by. And I just think we're missing a massive opportunity. And then we're also wasting a lot of our transfer budget in terms of really kicking this team on. You go to... whose point was it here?
Can I just add to that? How much game time or how many videos did Ange watch of Jamie Donnelly last season or the last 2 seasons where the kids played just about every bloody position other than goalkeeper to think, I know, I'm going to play him in pre-season and I'm going to play him at left back? Why?
That's what drives me mad. But this is what drives me mad. It's just like, again, this is my whole point. The academy kids get looked at different. And I would argue, some of the talent that they possess, you look at Bergvall, everyone goes, he's generational now. Yeah, it took him time to get there, but give Donny that time. How do you know he might not be even better? The reality is we don't. But my whole point is, every year going into Europe, we're having to piss about with the squad registration. Players are having to miss out. We're throwing 4 or 5 goalkeepers in there to meet the homegrown quota and shit like that. For me, you're never going to get a better opportunity to develop 4 or 5 of these players and solve that problem for the next 10 or so years moving forward, because the talent is genuinely there. You look at some of the impact some of the youngsters that we spoke about have had. The likes of Donny and others who have been some of the better ones from the under-21s. Imagine the impact they could have. So for me, I think we're just missing a trick here moving forward. And I think it's a problem that I don't want to see us go after any more youngsters. I think we've got more than enough between the academy and what we've already bought. I want to see us start addressing the problem properly. Foggy Foam says, but Dave, in Jan, you wanted another attacker, keeping in mind we had these young guys. No, 100%. But my whole point is, and in the summer and in January, why do we keep being youngsters when we've got them? What we need to do is bring in quality. I've said it since we sold Harry Kane. This club is going to go one way once you sell Harry Kane if we don't address it properly. I've consistently said quality matters. I've been on last one on Spurs with Johnny, and I said bringing in Matisse Tell, I don't want him here, to be quite frank. I think it's a huge gamble. At the end of the day, he's still young, he's still raw. He's still not doing what we need to do in terms of finding the back of the net consistently moving forward. And this is what I keep trying to say. Stop pissing about spending money on youngsters. We've got more than enough talent around this football club now to progress that moving forward. Go and spend money on real players. And that's my big problem. Like bringing in Matisse Tell. Is he any better than, Will Lancashire, Dane Scarlett? And most people are going to say, yeah, of course he is, Dave. He's got experience at Bayern Munich, etc. Okay. But Dane Scarlett has more of an impact on this team than what Matisse Tell has so far. So I don't want to hear it, quite frank. So for me, that's my whole point. You're taking gambles in the window, developing everyone else's talents, and stuff like that, or spending money where you could be bringing in real quality to impact this and drive these youngsters forward, show them the pathway, set the bar even higher for them to get in the team, which means you drag them along and be better. So for me, I just think we're absolutely mismanaging this situation. I said it too last season, Jack. If we come out of this period and we don't have a homegrown core that have come through and we haven't developed 4 or 5 of this, we need an inquest into this football club, because any other club will be taking advantage of this situation right now.
I think that's the point you wanted to harp in on, is that if you believe you already have very, very talented academy players coming through, why is it then that Spurs just continue to spend money on still young players, but from other academies, when we already have our own, when instead that could be spent on more experienced players? I think that's the point you're harping in on. Paul Connor, though, from earlier, 18 months as a member. Thank you, Paul. Saying, evening, guys. Everyone says play the youth, but one bad game and everyone will want them out of the team. In my opinion, I don't think our fans are patient enough to allow our youth to develop as we got starved of trophies. Personally, Paul, I don't know if this is true, actually. I think Spurs fans would actually be more, like a lot of football fans are actually quite excited when they get to see their young players given a chance. And I do think they tend to look at them a bit differently than they would, someone that has been brought in for 30 or 40 million pounds. I do think they look at it differently, to be honest. But maybe I'm wrong.
Look, to be quite frank, I couldn't care if the fan base has the patience or not. At the end of the day, the club should just come out and, as good practice moving forward, so they don't have these complications every year when it comes to European squad registration, where it affects some of our senior players. Realize that there's a golden opportunity to do it here and just do it for the benefit of the football club. And I would also argue, where Pochettino actually bought a lot of buy-in and where fans actually gave him a lot of time through some tough times was because he was using younger kids, academy products, players that we had brought in and loaned out years around. He brought them all together and formed a team and pushed forward. And fans actually gave them that understanding and actually gave Pochettino more time. And you'd argue this season, coming out of the Europa League, you pull out some of the youngsters' performances, and that's where fans have been most happy. So I think, it's not about whether fans have the patience. I think it's about presenting it forward. And then I just think rational heads then start coming to the fore, where it's like they're young, they're talented. Let's give them some patience. I think it's a natural thing. I think it has to be pushed by the club, though.
And then stateside footy, becoming a member as well, and decide to become a member of your guys' channel. You guys are the best. Very, very kind of you, stateside. And I know Dave really, really enjoyed your conversation as well that you guys had on your channel there. We're going to move on, I think, to
just throw something in. Can I just throw something in? I just saw something Ange had said. That he says the biggest joke in football is the assist statistic. He doesn't believe it's a load of nonsense. He said you can get one off the back of your backside. He said, and then try to caveat it by going, "Oh yeah, but Danes was a good assist." I mean, really, why set yourself up? Why say such shit?
Honestly, he likes a soundbite. Sam and I have had this conversation before. He likes a soundbite instead of maybe avoiding these type of
I think maybe what he's actually trying to do is inadvertently trying to praise Kulu. It's like, Dane won the header, but Kulu done everything else, but he didn't get it across in that terms, maybe.
He's an old school man. He doesn't like the assist, Johnny. He's an old school man.
Why say it, man? Why say I win a cup? Why say I don't do set piece coaching? Why you fueling your own fire underneath you? You're
just giving Johnny more opportunity to have a pop at you.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to touch on to some maybe the squad news, around the team. Sam, we saw Romero is on the grass. What do you make of that? Should he be thrown straight into the starting 11 now that he's potentially available? Would you throw him in the AZ Alkmaar game? If you're available for Man City, would you throw him in? And then also, with the likes of Mickey van de Ven, the fact that he's not been spotted on the grass and in training.
He's on the grass. He got big problems, right? He ain't going to pass the test before the game. What sort of grass are we talking?
Sam, Romero, would you throw him in against AZ Alkmaar, or as soon as he is available, would you throw him into the team?
Well, you said your original question was, what do you make of it? And I hate to say it, but it sounds like there's an Argentina game coming up. Look, with Romero, yes, we've definitely missed him, right? And his ability on the ball, the way that he plays it has clearly been I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? You realize what you're missing, and not to jump the gun, but when I saw Solanke back on the training pitch, that's when I was like, oh god, we've missed this guy so much. But Romero, I wouldn't throw him in straight off the bat. I'd kind of maybe do it the same that he's done it with Destiny. He didn't play any minutes in that first game against United. And then he played 60 odd minutes or whatever against Ipswich. And I think that's probably the way to go. And, a lot of fans, myself probably included, as much as I want to see us climb the table, our priority should be Europe. And so, first, I mean, Danso hasn't. I wouldn't say he's been a consistent 7 or 8 since he joined. I don't think he's done anything particularly bad. I know his first game was that thrashing against Liverpool, but I don't really think any of those goals were his fault. And it would be harsh to just throw him straight out, but regardless of harshness, I just think that the Chelsea game showed us that, you can't rush these players back. I know that Romero was supposedly in training like a month ago, and then suddenly he just disappeared, right? So maybe he has been ready this whole time, and maybe everything I'm saying is bollocks, and Andrew will just throw him straight in. But I personally think that a mix between the fact that Danso's been good since he's come in and the fact that Europe is our priority, I would keep Romero on the bench. Maybe I'll give him 10, 20 minutes towards the end of the game, to rest the likes of Gray, maybe, considering that he's played a whole host of minutes. And I don't know what's happening with Ben Davies, but obviously he was out of the squad the other day. So personally, I would keep Romero on ice, and I'd bring him in the Alkmaar game rather than at the City game.
Anything you disagreed with there, Dave? Or
look, for me, I think Romero just walked straight back in. I don't care what people say. Him and Van de Ven are our 2 best defenders. Look, Danso's been brilliant, and I absolutely really like what I see from him. He's your old school fashion centre half, puts his body on the line, breaks up play, makes it difficult for the attackers. But, I feel like with Danso playing left-sided centre-back against Ipswich, I think it opens up the door for Romero returning in against AZ Alkmaar at right-sided centre-back, which then you'll see Archie Gray drop to the bench. The fact that Bentancur is getting a new contract, Davies' contract is coming up to an end. They haven't offered him new one. Is it time where maybe they're going to phase him out now towards the end of his contract coming up? So I think, looking at everything, and to be honest with you, I also don't think we're being told the full story around Mickey Van de Ven. You're seeing pictures back of Romero on the training pitch, but not Mickey Van de Ven. So again, I think Romero and Danso would probably be your partnership, seeing out the rest of this season, in my opinion. So yes, I think Romero walked straight back in. But even if everyone else was fit, Romero still walked straight back in because he's our best player out from the back. We've taken a massive hit in terms of, one thing we don't see is James Maddison making them runs beyond the striker. Romero was the only one that could find them from the back line. I still think progressing that ball from the left-hand side with Van de Ven is still nowhere near the same as it is when you play anyone else there. Van de Ven seems to do it a lot quicker. And plus, look, I get this whole conspiracy around Argentina sort of looks like that. But for me, look, he's still our best defender at the end of the day. So for me, I think he walked straight back into this team, even if everybody else was fit, quite frank.
He's still got some very important games before Argentina, if he is available, for him to play for us, to prove his loyalty once again.
Johnny, where are you at with Romero?
Listen, all you need to know, the guy's a winner. Right. And we complain at this club, we don't have winners. And then when we have a winners, we complain, oh, he's too aggressive. He's too rash. He's too rash. Give it a rest, for God's sake. Right. Okay. Fucking hell, honestly. Italian defender of the year, the home of defending. He was considered number 1. Right. Yeah. The guy was signed from Atalanta with a muscle condition that has to be managed.
What is the muscle condition, Johnny, for people that don't know?
I don't know exactly what it is, but it's just something that needs to be managed. He can't play all the time. And lo and behold, what happened? I said it before the season started. Okay, he's gone for a full season. They tried to take him to Australia for a meaningless, crappy game against Newcastle. And then he's off to America, to the Americas, flying all over the place, all the pre-tournament games before the Copa America, played the Copa America, went all the way to the final. He had 2 weeks rest. 2 weeks, not 4 weeks, 2 weeks. And I said, him and Destiny Udogie, Destiny having had the quad operation, right, was rushed back way too soon. And I said that he does not look right at the beginning of the season. He needs a rest. Why would you rush him back? he's going to get injured. And we saw his form. His form at the beginning of the season, Romero, wasn't great at all. He looked a shadow of himself. But I'm not going to listen to that. This guy's won 2 Copa Americas. He's been in the team of the Copa America twice. He's in the team of the World Cup, right? He's won a World Cup. And Messi says, you know, that little fella Messi, you might have heard of him, says he thinks that he's the best defender in the world. Now, look, might be over-egging it, but for Spurs fans to say, let's get rid of him, he's not good enough, he's too rash. Well, I don't buy into it. So for me,
I'm not sure, Johnny, I'm not sure that's the reason necessarily that people want to, or people are open to getting rid of him. I feel like wanting to get rid of him is maybe a bit too strong. I think that myself included, and I'm not saying
don't get the culture, Sam. They don't get the culture, Sam. The culture is, whether you like it or I like it, the guys that play for Real Madrid, the bigger thing for them is to play for Brazil and Argentina than to play for Real Madrid. And the same for Argentina, South America. It's an honor. It is the greatest honor, better than playing for your club. We have a different view of it here. Here it's club first, country second. And that's the problem that we have as British fans when we look, quite rightly, and we look at Romero doing that look, see, he clearly wants out. He's ambitious. This club doesn't have any ambition. So
and that's another thing as well. I don't want people to get up and, if he wants, let him go. We learned our lesson with Harry Kane. Got to try and do our best to try and put the pressure on the club to try and keep these guys here. And ironically, actually, Johnny, one thing you said, and I agree with you, because, I had a lot of people moaning to me about it, about his aggression, this, that, and the other. And it's sort of like, what do people love about Danzo? How aggressive he is. So it's ironic that people ask Romero to sort of tame his aggression, to be quite frank.
Yeah. We did have another sort of good squad question, maybe on someone's potential future here. With the prominent rise of Djed Spence this season, has this put some cast and doubt over Pedro Porro's future for you guys? And also considering, he's kind of struggled defensively at fullback. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just start that one off quickly? For me, I don't even want to enter the conversation of considering to even sell Pedro Porro again. For me, competition is absolutely key at Tottenham Hotspur. For me, you keep Pedro Porro, Djed Spence, you go and sign another left back, you have him competing with Destiny Udogie, and that's the perfect scenario moving forward. At the end of the day, Pedro Porro offers something a bit different to Djed Spence. You need different solutions, for different games moving forward, and you need competition for places. If we end up selling Pedro Porro because we got Djed Spence, you're back to square one yet again, where you use Djed Spence for every game he goes, and then you're hoping he stays fit. For me, got to learn. It's not about selling Pedro Porro. It's more conversations about what does he need to do to displace Djed Spence. I would hope that would be the mature conversations moving forward. And that's all I'm going to say on the situation, because I keep speaking about at Tottenham, you need competition.
Anybody sell Pedro Porro this summer? Anybody think that you can do better than Pedro Porro?
What? You're on mute, Johnny.
Sam or Johnny?
You're on mute, Johnny.
Either or.
Johnny's on mute.
Don't jump all at once.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we've waited all this time for competition. Now we got competition, and the first thing we talk about is getting rid of one. Oh dear, competition is a good thing. This thing, there's like, oh yes, he can come and he can be a backup. No, clubs with ambition have competition for all places. There's no such thing as that. Listen, I've gone on till I'm blue in the face since we signed him under Conte. Before he even set foot at the club, I said he's not a defender. He's a winger, right? Or a wing back at best. And for me, I would have always loved to have seen him on the right wing. And personally, Djed Spence behind him. I used to say Emerson Royal behind him, but now Djed Spence at right back, Emerson Royal right wing. Thank you very much. I would change a lot of what's gone on in the club, but I'm not the manager, so that's what I would do. But no, I would not be getting rid of him. But what are you going to do? Get rid of him, and suddenly we got an injury to Djed Spence, and then suddenly we got no right back. Yeah, or you can play Archie Gray and say he's not good enough.
Sam, do you think? I mean, I remember last time you guys both didn't think he is a right back or is a fullback. So when you then consider moving him on, then if he isn't really being played in the position that he's best in,
I think the concern of Jonny and Dave, I agree with it. You know, we've been crying out for competition in all positions across the pitch, and to let Porro go, you put that competition in jeopardy when we finally potentially have it. The only thing I would say in maybe leaning towards selling Porro is he's clearly wanted by other teams, right? You know, there's been rumors that clubs in Spain are looking at him. The concern for me of letting him go is that we've seen the club is happy to just sit with one fullback. Look at Destiny. We've literally run him into the ground, and he's 21 or whatever. But if the club actually had some ambition to try and build like a strong team, I wouldn't cry letting Porro go. I think Porro is a great player. I don't know if he works for us. I think he's got a great attitude. I think he's great to have around the squad. So I don't have any qualms with him being there. But I don't know if your overall question, like with Spence and Destiny now, like coming back to the team, maybe it's not a case of necessarily for Porro's future. Should he leave the club? But should he be starting? It's kind of an interesting question because I don't know about you guys. I actually didn't think that Spence played that well against Ipswich until he moved back over to the left. You know, he had moments. You're on mute, Jonny.
You're on mute, Jonny.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what I keep saying. Can I just say to you, Sam, you're absolutely spot on. And I said the first 15, 20 minutes, I turned around to my son and to the guys next to me and said, and you blame Pedro Porro. This ain't Pedro Porro. This isn't Djed Spence. This is the bloody system. Look how far out of position Djed Spence was on that right-hand side. And you've got Archie Gray trying to deal with Liam Delap on his own over and over and over again. He had to adjust that first 10, 15 minutes. The game could have been over against the quality team. You're absolutely spot on, Sam. You know, that he was terrible in that first 15, 20 minutes. But that was on the instructions because I've seen Djed Spence play a lot and I've never, ever seen him take up that position that he was in.
I actually agree. I had a similar question, and I was speaking to me and Jack actually were speaking about it, behind the scenes where it's like, does it come down to instructions or does it come down to Pedro Porro just sort of not being able to do it? And seeing Djed Spence move over there and still seeing maybe the same sort of, vulnerabilities, I do think, you and Sam are spot on in terms of, and Jack was always spot on in terms of, I do think it comes down to maybe what he's being asked to do rather than, his ability.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think that in that game, as Jonny said, it for me, it did show a weakness of the system because we've been looking at Djed Spence like he's the second coming of Christ.
Which he is.
He is.
He is. Continue.
And he goes on the right and suddenly you think like, I was kind of thinking, not that I would have started I wanted to see Djed Spence there, but I was thinking like, like Djed Spence is leaving Archie very exposed. He's tucking in when he's not up the pitch. He's tucking in too much, leaving the right side too open. Yeah. And I've seen that game after game after game with both Porro and also Archie Gray playing there. It's clearly the way the system is designed. And as I've said, pretty much in the 10 months or whatever it is since I've been doing shows with you guys, I think the system defensively is fundamentally flawed, and I think
it's improving. I do think it's improving as the season goes on.
Sure, and look, once we get our first choice defenders back, and we finally have that back five that we all think is good enough to rival most back fives in the league. I'm talking about with the goalkeeper, not necessarily a back five of defenders. Then maybe we will see improvement. But for now, and this is, I guess, where people have had criticism of Ange, and you're seeing very similar criticism of Amorim coming in. you don't have the players to play this kind of system. So adapt. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily agreeing with that right now. I'm just saying these are the criticisms that are being labelled and thrown out against the likes of Amarim and the likes of Ange. I do think that, and as I've said from the beginning, there needs to be a tweak with this right hand, with the fullbacks. I think that we've seen a tweak in the last, half a season or maybe a bit longer on the left hand side, where we've seen Destiny and now Spence not inverting nearly as much. They're still able to invert, and no one's saying don't invert the fullbacks. I just think that fundamentally a fullback's job should be to stay wide and offer support defensively, but also overlapping on the wing. And maybe I've got a different football philosophy to Ange, and who am I to say that mine is better than his, right? I'm just saying that how I see it, and I think that the fullbacks that we've got, especially if you're saying that Spence is looking better on the left and Porro should stay on the right, the fullbacks we've got are wing backs, or play like wing backs, in my opinion, better than they would as a false back or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think, though, when it comes to Postecoglou's system, I do think, just because it's not something that we're used to seeing, it doesn't mean it's wrong. I think, you got to look at it in terms of what it is out of possession and what it is in possession. Out of possession, it's your 4-1-2-3, whatever you want to call it. But then when we're in possession, I think what he's trying to do is bring the right fullback in to create an extra CDM so that he can get two of his midfielders to push forward in an attacking sense and create overloads that way. And I think he's trying to be a little bit clever in that regard. But I don't think we found the right player to do it. So in that case, maybe it might have to be a shit. And you would argue, what player is going to be able to do that? That's a natural fullback and step in. And so, I think maybe he might have to tweak that going forward and just accept it has to be, a bit like what Pochettino done. Just, you know your position. It's very sort of simple to a certain degree. But look, I think the good thing coming out of it is, I know, Sam, you said there's going to be clubs interested in Porro. I don't care. Reject them, knock them back, keep Pedro Porro here and go and get another left back, because when you actually look at the defensive cover in the summer, you got Danzo and Romero, fuck Dragosin, he can go. You've got Djed Spence, Pedro Porro. All you need to do is buy a left-sided centre-back and a left-back, and you've got your cover right across that back line. You've got your goalkeeper sorted out, and then all of a sudden you're into your midfield and your forward area, and if you can address that with the right quality, we can really kick on next year. So for me, we've got to keep what we have and then look to fill out the other areas the same.
And then we did have one final question, lads, on Bentancur's new contract. Could this be the end of Bissouma? Was there potentially a battle all along between the two for, the future in Tottenham's midfield? Was the Bentancur contract the end of Bissouma? Johnny?
I would say yes.
Do you think there was a battle there for a contract between the two of them in a sense?
No, for me, Bentancur is more reliable. Listen, he's had a stop-start season. He's got the ban from Uruguay. He's had the ban from for his comments. He had the injury. It's been stop-start. And so, I'm going to give him that. But when Romero comes back, you'll see him go up a level, because the transition and the understanding those two have. When Romero comes forward, he picks up the ball. Those two know exactly where they are. They're connected, and we are a much better team in the midfield. The other thing is, you've got to remember, when Romero's on form, his ability to step into that middle to offer steal. That's why I always thought, personally, I would have loved to see a back three. I really would. Purely from the fact that it gives us balance. We've got Mickey van der Ven and Romero both like to roam forward, and now you've got someone like Danso who can drop back. I don't know. It's not going to happen, but I wouldn't sell it.
It's a pipe dream, Johnny. That one, Angela
it's
never.
All a pipe dream. It's all a pipe dream. I also believe that Romero could possibly play as a 6. Personally.
Yeah, no, look, I hear what you're saying, but
he's not interested in 6s. He wants 2 8s.
Do you know what it is, though, for me, Johnny? I'm sick of reinventing the wheel at Tottenham. If you need a number 6, go and sign the number 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah, stop with the 2 8s. Go and buy a Monster 6. Go and buy Edison at Atlanta, or there's plenty of them about. There's plenty of them about.
I mean, Sam, do you sort of agree with Johnny when it comes to Bissouma and Bentancur?
Yeah, I slightly disagree in the sense that he said at the beginning that you didn't think that there was a competition between the two. I think personally, the way that I see it, and maybe it's because Ange saw Bentancur as more of a winner and a leading mentality, that he didn't need to put the arm around him, but the public support that he was showing Bissouma, at the start of last season, at the start of this season, through the balloon stuff, I think Ange really wanted it to work with Bissouma. I don't know if that's because he thought that he was a slightly more defensive option than Bentancur, but also has the ability to dribble past a man. But I just think that the professionalism of Bentancur, and look, he has, bozo moments, and he has games where you question whether he's even playing. But I'd say for the whole with Bentancur, I think on the whole with Bentancur versus Bissouma is that Bentancur often, even when he's having let's say he has a bad first half, in the second half he plays well for me, and he steps up when he needs to. He's better with the ball at his feet, but he's also better passing the ball. I think Bissouma holds the ball way too long. We've given Bissouma 3 seasons now, and I just think that if it was ever going to work with Bissouma, it would have been this season. Obviously the Conte season, he never really got any minutes, so you have to kind of wipe that one out. Last season, he was starting to learn the new system, whatever, so was everyone else. But, this season was the season for him to really push on. And he's just shown us that he's not that guy. And I really wanted it to work. I really wanted Bissouma when we signed him, and was actually gobsmacked that we did manage to sign him. Yeah. And unfortunately, similar to the likes of Sessegnon, not for the same reasons, but it's not worked out for a player I had a lot of hype over. And it's just time to let him go. I don't know what kind of team would be in for him. Maybe he ends up going abroad, because I'm not sure that other Premier League teams would be impressed with him enough to say that he's good enough to be in a top team. I don't see him wanting to go to a much lower rated team than Spurs. Obviously, being in 12th, I understand that's a bit rich coming from us, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Look, for me, first of all, completely disagree with you over Bentancur. I call him Mercedes-Benz class. I think he's our most consistent midfielder. I think, when he plays, I think the team looks so much more better. We look calmer. We dominate possession a hell of a lot more. The system doesn't look as, gung-ho. There's a bit more element of control to it. I think
Dave, consistent against what options, though? It's like we've got no one else that is even that decent.
Well, against Bissouma, against the guy that's been playing.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The competition is not that high, is my point.
No, okay, yeah, I can agree with that, but I still think you're bringing better. I still think you're bringing good, better players into midfield and better options. I still think he holds his own. I think underneath Antonio Conte, he's our best player. Getting forward, scoring goals, mixing up, playing balls. You look at. There's a big difference between him and Bissouma in that number 6. When Bissouma's in that number 6, he often has to go and dribble right up to the player and give it off to them. He's vacating position. He takes too much risk. You give that ball to Bentancur, it doesn't matter whether there's 2 or 3 or 4 people, pressurizing him. He just pivots out of it. It's like a robber robbing a bank with the FBI around it waiting to catch him. He just slithers out. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely brilliant. So for me, I think he's won that race. Yes, he's had a difficult couple of years through injury, and then obviously his mouth got him into trouble and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he's our best midfielder, so I think he definitely warrants that contract. And when he's not there, we badly miss him. When it comes to Yves Bissouma, I mean, look, Conte told us when he left, he didn't trust the guy. He couldn't take on tactical instructions. He's sort of one of them. He's a free spirit, which means you have to give him a free role. And the role we're asking Bissouma to do, he can't do. And then if you want to give him a free role in the number 8, he doesn't have really, a great passing range to be able to unlock, teams and stuff like that. So we're sort of limited in terms of what we can do with Yves Bissouma right now. And I think also then, Ange Postecoglou put his arm around him, showed a lot of him a faith, said to him, you're my guy to try and get him going. he let him down. Then he comes into this preseason on laughing gas on balloons, which earned him the nickname East Bissouma, and then what he's done this season is he's had absolutely airhead moments. You go back to the Chelsea game in the balance, the guy gives away a fucking penalty, swings the game in Chelsea's favour. You go back to the Arsenal game, he gets his pocket picked in midfield, they turn the ball over, go up and score. You go back to the Liverpool game, again in one of the games, again, he got his pocket picked, they went up and scored. For me, he can't be trusted in that role. You also put him in the number 6 role. He doesn't have a passing ability to be able to get himself out of trouble. He takes too much risks on the football. And at the end of the day, it's been a complete underwhelming signing. Look, every Spurs fan was happy when we signed East Bissouma. We're absolutely buzzing. We're like, look, this guy could be a game changer in midfield. But the reality is, it's another end on fat ass, all the ability, but doesn't want to live his life right to get the maximum out of himself on the pitch. He's known for his lifestyle off the pitch, he's Bissouma, and that's a bad thing. And when you've got a lot of young talent around the squad that we have, when he's one of the senior members, because he's 27, 28 now, you can't have a guy that's behaving like that. It sets a bad example. It sets a bad precedent for all these youngsters coming through. So for me, I think, unfortunately, his time has come to a natural end where you have to eliminate that out of the dressing room for the benefit of this football club moving forward. Oh, not including one of the games he got sent off. Oh, sorry. He came out after the Chelsea game as well, apologized, said he's going to do better, and then went into the Rangers game, was absolutely dog shit yet again. So for me, the guy's been given ample opportunity, and he's let everybody down. And you've got to move him on now at this point. And I think when you look at Bissouma's contract, I presume he's probably got, 2 years left maybe? I think it's come to a natural point this summer. You take what you can, you cash in on him, you move him on. And when you actually look at the midfield options, if you buy the left-sided centre-back and the left-back that I was speaking about, you move Archie Gray then into his natural CDM position. So you have him and Bentancur fighting out for that. You've also got Papamata, Sarr and Bergvall with the emergence of them, and also Archie Gray also pushes Bissouma more onto the periphery. And then you've got James Maddison. For me, you sign another 1 or 2 midfielders of a certain quality, all of a sudden you drag that standard in midfield forward completely. And then all of a sudden you're just left with addressing the proper areas in terms of the forward line. So I don't think we're actually too far away. It's just about shifting out the right players now. And then once you do that and you've made the room, you go after the right players to bring in here of real quality, of a certain stature to really kick this on. So hopefully we get it right this summer and don't miss like we done last summer. But in roundabout ways, I'm like you, Sam. I've given Yves Bissouma every chance because I think there's a real player in there. But unfortunately, when you want to go off in hailing balloons, be out in the nightclubs, everything else, your career's only going to take one way. And he's going to be another player that's going to sit there when he's 40 and go, fuck me, if only I would have concentrated. So,
Bissouma really has no excuses either, on his own accord, because he had no competition in front of him. Bentancur has been injured or suspended or whatever pretty much the entire time that he's had to be able to nail down this role in the deeper midfield. And he also, from what we could tell, really had a liking to Bissouma or to Ange. Ange has put his arm around him. Ange has, praised him, to high heaven. Ange has given him plenty of opportunities to come back, fight his way back into the team, come in and out of form, in and out of injuries, suspension. He's been given a lot of love by Ange Postecoglou. So in a sense, Bissouma really hasn't had, doesn't have any excuses. And even with Conte, yes, he had the injury, but Conte was already done with him, pretty quickly, so that's not really, I think, much of a huge excuse really either in his point. It's more damning of Bissouma that he didn't necessarily have it that hard to nail down a starting position really at Spurs. And yet he really couldn't, despite there being practically no competition in front of him. But earlier, we had Jonny leave. By the way, everybody do subscribe to Football Inc. I put in the link one last time there, and also because I think sometimes we do end up getting him in trouble with the misses. So I think at least he would appreciate, some follows over to the YouTube page. So at least that could, make him feel like it's worth it in that regards for maybe some sort of lessons. Rob Wallace gifting out the memberships. Let me pull these up here. Thank you so much, Rob. Very, very generous.
Rob, very, very kind of you. First of all, before we even get into that, how are you, Rob? How's life treating you over the other side of the world? And how are you feeling about Tottenham right now? You've sort of sat on the periphery this season, showing us support here and there, but we haven't really found out, how you're feeling about Tottenham right now and what's gone on this season. So please put it in the comments and let us know, buddy.
We're second half season Hotspur. That's the mode we're in right now, Rob Wallace. Second half season. He's gifted one out to Tottenham Ranger, N1 Yak, Rob Frank, Andrew Spurs, Potato Stew, great name, Making Good Time, also good name, Kenneth Tottenham Hotspur, big up to you, Kenneth. Simon Coley as well, big up Simon. Daniel Keppel Music, and then AR, all gifted one by Rob Wallace. Please, everybody, take advantage of it. Fan show was just yesterday, but you can come on for the next one. And we have a huge Europa League game to be previewing. You know, the first start of this very, very important competition that I think we all have our eggs in the basket for. So please, everybody, join us for that. Make your debut and take advantage of the generosity of Rob, as well as from earlier, Super Spurs TV, who also gifted out the memberships.
And especially if there's any of you that disagree with what we say here, you know, feel free to come on these shows and, you know, have it out with us. You know, I have no problem sitting here and, you know, having chats with people about, you know, whether if you disagree with some stuff. So feel free, you know, sometimes the fan shows can be all too lovey-dovey and cuddly, you know, get on and disagree with us if that's what you want to do. But big up, Rob. Good to see you along with Mr. Fazzy Radsfar as well. Another 4-1 against Man City would be absolutely buzzing. That's where this name generated from, Faz Radfar. So good to see you. Ricardo's been saying it's been a great show. Really appreciate that, my man. Morgan says a question is Cardoso coming next season. He's good 6 and a huge upgrade to Bissouma. To be honest with you, I'm not quite so sure there. I'll be honest, I'd be very surprised if we've any interest in Cardoso. I think it's a deal that, you know, we struck to try and save face for not really getting too much for the sell. So in the end, to be quite frank with you, I think, you know, and then obviously every transfer window, it's an easy rumor to make. But if we had any interest with our injury crisis, we would have brought him in this January if we were ever going to activate that deal, in my opinion, on that one. And then just quickly, we've got Trinidad says, is winning Europa the only respite for Enoch and Levy in recent justified protests? I think, you know, if we were to win Europa League, I think it would quell down the noise around them a hell of a lot, for sure. To be quite frank with you, for sure. Rob Wallace says, hi, guys. Injuries have ruined our season, but maybe a late charge up the table. I hope to see major improvements next season. Come on, you Spurs. And look, that's what we're all hoping for, Rob Wallace. I think, you know, that's why Jack's saying, you know, second half season Tottenham, I would say 1/3 or third of the season Tottenham Hotspur, to be quite frank, Rob Wallace. But look, you know, there's no point sitting there and dwelling on the situation. It's happened now. It's just about trying to salvage the best out of what you can. It's the sort of way I look at it, my man. Faz says, I like that about your channel, David. You listen to all views for or against. Big up. And look, I have no problem sitting there if people disagree with me and stuff. At the end of the day, you know, as long as we can have a proper conversation and you're not sitting there going, you're a welly and I'm calling you a wally, you know what I mean? Because it does not for anybody. Let's talk football. Let's see what we disagree on, Faz. That's what I've always been like. Big up, my man, and big up, Phil P. Good to see you. And then we've got Stateside Foot. He says Jonny Cardoso is a massive prospect at the 6 for the US men's national team. Some are saying that he has the potential to be better than Tyler Adams, which is a massive compliment. He's still raw. Well, look, maybe we'll have to get you to do a little video or something on Jonny Cardoso. You seem to be a big fan about that, about this guy, my man. And then we've also got DB says Dave and Jack provide a platform for all views. Well, look, that's what I've always tried to do. I don't care what side of the opinion you're on. Just as long as you're not a dick, let's have a conversation. That's the way I see it, DB. Big yourself up, my man. Look, me and you, we always disagree, right, DB? But we can still sit here and, you know, show each other some love, which is absolutely great. And but look, and then Sports Lover says there's always growing pains in a rebuild, which is fair. But, you know, Tottenham seem to be in a constant state of rebuild since Pochettino. And I think that's where many maybe of the, you know, new Spurs fans don't understand some of the older Spurs fans' frustrations because of how long we've been in this rebuild. But look, we're down to the last segment of the evening, guys, and it is your guys' questions, the listeners' questions, or the members' questions. So we're going to fly through these, and then we're all going to get off and have lovely steak dinners tonight, or at least that would be the dream, and that's what I try to envision on my plate. But it's more so probably going to be some cheap breaded chicken nuggets and chips or something like that. But look, let's go, Jack.
Yes, we have and also opportunity for, you know, maybe a plug here in case you guys didn't know. As members, you can send in your questions before these panel shows at the end, and we do reserve a little bit of time to answer them. Dropkick your teacher. We got to fly through these. He likes to throw in some. Do you guys think that Ange was lying about Spence and being tested? Ange comes off as the kind of guy that doesn't like to admit he was wrong. Had it not been for injuries in Genoa, not being able to afford him, he'd still he'd either be on the bench or is playing somewhere in Europa. I might take this one, and if someone disagrees with me, they can.
No, we'll take
Djed Spence. I think we don't know the full story and the whole picture because, you know, when he came in under Conte, I think it was unfair on him. I don't think he ever, you know, had a chance. Really, Conte used him as a bit of a pawn. You know, kind of an argument between him and Levy. Levy wanted him as like this homegrown signing through some connection he might have had. He was never set up for success there. But then eventually it looked like that maybe that kind of got to Djed Spence, as it would, with plenty of players, maybe got a little sidetracked, disillusioned, potentially distracted. We had heard rumors, maybe some parties, and things like that he was having, at the place, and just, maybe wasn't fully, maybe again, involved or that focused, with the career. And also when you look at his time, I think it was with Nice or Rennes, it was Rennes, right? With Rennes, he didn't really have that great of a spell there. He actually had some big mistakes and some high profile games, didn't really have the best of times there. When he went to Genoa, kind of a mixed bag, when he was there, they did want to pay the full price, or, they didn't even want to pay the full price really for him. If they really wanted him, you think they might have. And so I just wonder, if Djed Spence, had taken some time to sort of get back to maybe himself again, and then he just needed just a wake-up call, or just needed something, to sort of spark some inspiration. We heard there was some changes in and around the people around him, his family, or like, his agent, that sort of thing, just some sort of changes and behind, off the pitch, really. So I'm just wondering if he's kind of just in a perfect time, focused himself, also taken the higher road, just realized that, what, I'm just going to forget what's happened in the past and just try to focus my career now. And I think that's what's happened. I'm not too sure if it's, the guy's just been an amazing, player that's just been ignored this whole time. I think there might have been, maybe some things that Djed Spence could have done differently previously. That's just my opinion, though. If we do get knocked out by AZ Alkmaar, do you think Ange gets the sack immediately, or wait until the season is over?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I'll be quick. I think, look, I think a lot of the fans will call for Ange Postecoglou to go if he gets knocked out of the Europa League, quite frank, regardless of what sort of league form we gather between now and the end of the season. Or goodwill he sort of gathers in the league between now and then. But look, I don't think we will get knocked out by AZ Alkmaar. I don't even think it's a possibility, to be honest with you. I think we safely say we should be in a quarterfinal.
And then, Sam, this one's for you. Why do some people seem to ignore 3-0 Fulham? Almost 4-0. Got saved by a ball deflecting off of offside, and a 4-0 against Newcastle. Yet this squad is strong at full strength. But when you look at the results, it's average, inconsistent. I think he's just saying, why do people ignore some of the big defeats that Ange has had, when he's had a stronger squad?
Yeah. Look,
why are you ignoring it, Sam? Why are you ignoring everything?
Yeah, why do you ignore the big defeats?
I feel personally attacked and gaslit, actually, because I don't ignore those results. I've had my criticism of Ange, and I've not been bullied by comments in the chat saying that I'm negative for saying how I really feel. Right? I did say that Brentford game recently pulled me back on side after I'd maybe gone over the line of leaning towards Ange out. I'll touch on a little bit of your question. I think that your question, Dave, as well. I think that if they were going to sack him, they would have done it already. So I just think that people are very quick to look at it, basically saying, oh yeah, now the injuries are back, we're back. And I'm not saying that I've not been like that in the past, because last season I did think, oh yeah, we'll get James Maddison back, we'll get Van der Ven back, we'll get these players back and we'll start cooking again. But from February onwards last season, we still didn't really kick into gear. We had a few spells where we put on a few runs, but overall we were underwhelming. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say that just getting all these players back, we will, kick on and push for a last ditch. If we don't get far in the Europa League enough to win it, push in for a late, European push in the league. I don't necessarily think that happens. I just think that you have to take everything as it comes, and those results, the 3-0 against Fulham, I think we just beat Villa 4-0 the game before at Villa Park. So that was a real kick in the teeth, I can't remember what the other game he said was, to be honest. But, the Newcastle game, yeah, we were told by Celtic fans, you're going to beat some teams like 5-0, and you're also going to get thumped by some teams 5-0. And we're yet to be thumped 5-0. We've had some bad results. Don't get me wrong. But those two that he mentioned, the Liverpool game at home, the Liverpool game away just recently. These things happen, and I'm trying to like get back behind them. I think the team deserves it. They've been through a lot of adversity. I think that some people will to sort of answer his question. I think some people will always see the good or bad, regardless. I try and stay balanced. But some people will say that Ange is the best thing ever. The players are amazing, and this and that, and we're just unlucky. Others will maybe see it more for how it is, in terms of we've been found out in moments. Yes, we've been unlucky, but we've also had moments like, for example, the start of the season, you drop points against Leicester, for example, where you've had a strong team, and it's still not quite clicking. So look, I mean, everyone's got their opinions. I think you just got to kind of make your own judgments and try not to listen to all the outside noise, because at the end of the day, football is a personal thing for everyone. So
fair.
He also says, and once said to never question his attorney if he wrestles Van de Ven Romero. What do you think of this? I don't know. I think he just took a big risk, to rush them back. I don't think, think he admitted to it being a big mistake as well. I think, even earlier, Artist, you said he doesn't admit to mistakes. I think he has admitted to that being a mistake, to some degree as well.
Yeah, but I also question, do we keep going? Are we in the realms where we blame Ange Postecoglou for everything? Just quickly, I mean, like, a lot of people were sort of blaming the training for the injuries, but then it turns out we haven't been training for large periods because of the amount of injuries we've had and stuff, and again, I think, you look at what's gone on around the medical department, the way we've sacked people, we're looking to bring new people in, is it actually deeper than Ange Postecoglou? Did the medical team get it wrong? Do you know what I mean? So again, I think, it's not as straightforward, or I think, again, do we just keep blaming everything on Postecoglou?
I think questioning integrity too, is more on the lines of when you really almost insult someone's intelligence in terms of if they are actually a professional in this regard. I think there have been questions laid on him that really have insulted his own intelligence. And I think that's when he says, don't question my integrity. But I think he has admitted to being wrong before. Maybe not all the time in your preference, but I think he does admit to it. What's everyone doing for lunch or dinner? Thinking about it right now, actually. I'm getting very hungry as you bring that up, Artist T. But we'll get to some of these others. Thank you for the support, by the way, man. Super Spurs TV, appreciate yours as well. While we all want our club to be as successful as possible, are we guilty of procrastinating and expecting too much? Prior to Enoch, we had won 2 trophies in 18 years, so not a lot has changed in terms of success, hence understanding why swaths of our fans want them gone. What would you like your views, Dave? So we want yours, Dave.
Yeah, look, I can understand what you're saying, Blaine Devlin, to a certain degree. It's interesting, actually. I'm a big fan of The Apprentice UK with Alan Sugar, and I was actually watching, I think it was the first season or the second season, old episodes, and they'd done an episode in and around Tottenham Hotspur and the stadium and stuff. And, when you look at what it was back then to what it is now, I think in terms of growth of the football club, from turning it from what it was to now, in terms of a well-respected club around Europe, the best stadium, the best training facilities, all these other extra revenues, I think on one side of the aspect, I think you've got to give the guy and Enoch in general a lot of credit. Don't get me wrong. And I think most people agree. But the reality is, with that and with where we got to under Pochettino, it brings demands with you. And, I think from what we've been sold with the stadium and all, we haven't really been seeing that translated onto the football pitch. We don't really see a clear direction on the football pitch. And it just seems like to many fans that, that seems to be taking a backseat almost to absolutely everything else. And at the end of the day, I think one thing fundamentally they have to shake hands with, you're buying a football club, and that's where all these extra things that you brought or you're bringing for yourself and everything else, it's off the back of you buying a football club. And that comes with a loyal fan base that care about one thing and one thing only. And I think you have to shake hands with that. Just like people say you've got to shake hands that, business comes with football. I think it has to be, both parties that have to shake hands with it and come to a good resolution. So I do agree with you that they deserve praise in that regard. But the reality is, where I'm at with it, to be honest with you, Blaine, he brought us into the top 6. but I question, does he actually have the risk appetite to do what it takes to take us beyond that and actually go and win trophies, which you need to take risks to go and do that. It's all about taking risks to take that next step. And I just don't think Daniel Levy has it in him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a Spurs fan, but he's a trained accountant. He's a businessman. They're all billionaires. You don't get that by taking risks. You know, to a certain degree, especially when you've made it and you want to keep it, you don't take risks with it. And they're trained never to go against the numbers. And when it comes to playing that extra, when it comes to having the foresight and going, he's our guy, we'll pay you whatever it takes to get here, we'll pay the transfer fee, I don't think he's ever going to do that. And that's where I think the club is always going to be stuck in this limbo. And to that regard, I think he's took it as far as he can. And I do think it's time, you know, he looks to maybe push it on. But only sell it to the right owners that are really going to genuinely want to take that next step. And plus, look, like I keep saying, I'm a little fat Irish guy. I'm in my early 30s, you know, going into my 40s. I've got health complications. I don't know how long I have left on this planet. And I'm at the point now where I would rather take that risk because I just want to see my club win something the way my dad has, to be quite frank. You know, I'm jealous in the moments he has. He can sit there and say, Dave, this was a great night. I'm sitting there and I'm talking about Ajax and it's a semi-final. It's not final or lifting trophies like my dad has. So I can't compare. So long-winded answer, but yeah, for me, that's where I'm at, Blaine. Let me know your thoughts.
Trinidad, I think in a way you kind of answered to a degree some of it. Similar minded question, is winning the Europa League the only saving grace for Levy and Enoch in the light of justified recent protests? Good question. I don't think the Europa League would be the only saving grace. I think sadly it would have to be a bit more for them. You know, I think so much damage, so much sort of, you know, bad water, so much, you know, bad blood between, you know, the fans and Daniel Levy. I think the Europa League would definitely take our minds off of things, probably certainly maybe quell to some degree maybe some of the attention that's being around. But I think from Spurs fans, they've been fed up with Levy for some time now. So I just don't know if that fixes everything. It probably would need to be more than just a Europa League, perhaps again, like Europa League, another Europa League trophy or something within then the next 5 years again or something like that, to show that it wasn't just all a fluke or something like that, that it wasn't just, you know, by the manager alone. And probably on top of that would need to be maybe a huge signing, you know, or something that, you know, Spurs fans haven't seen, you know, bringing in a top level player that showed that type of ambition that they are going to back a manager. I think it would take multiple things. Paul Connor saying, what is the highest league position you think we will achieve this season? If we don't win the Europa League, can you see us qualify for Europe through the league? Also, do you think we can win the Europa League and grab a Champions League spot next season? What are your thoughts if we don't win the Europa League and do not qualify for Europa this season? How do you think it will affect our summer signings? Essentially, Sam, he's asking you about chances of winning the Europa League, not winning the Europa League, the outcomes of either or.
So at the start of the season, I believe I said I was expecting to win the Europa League, or my hope for the season was to win the Europa League and to not finish lower than sixth. Obviously, not finishing lower than sixth, that's got a bit of awry. And, you know, I think realistically in the league, we could put a bit of a run together, and at a push, maybe we could finish like 9th, maybe 8th. And depending on how the coefficient goes, especially if teams that are in the already in the European competitions win in the League Cup and the FA Cup, that the European places go down to 9th or something like that. So if we were to get 9th and we got a conference, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't be over the moon to be in the conference, but I would want to at least finish in Europe, because I think one of the worst things that could happen for us now is to not have so many games after we've gone through this hardship and started to build a bit of a squad, because suddenly you're just gonna have a bunch of players who can't play because you haven't got any games for them. I still think we can win the Europa League. I think that maybe going against a little bit of what I said earlier about the players coming back and maybe not having an effect, I think that they will have an effect in a competition like the Europa League, especially, as you say, they have the likes of Romero, who have won trophies, and I think that Bentancur, Romero, I can't think of it. I guess Kulusevski as well has won trophies, but not many of our players have won trophies. But those kind of players, even Maddison, you know, he's won the FA Cup. these kind of players are going to be very important for us in the Europa League, because they have gotten over that hurdle, gotten over that hill of winning a trophy, and especially Romero, I think, because he's won 2 Copa Americas and a World Cup in the last 6 years or whatever. He's basically won a trophy every time he can outside of Spurs. And if you can get Van der Ven back, I know you're saying you're not 100% sure if we will see him again this season, but having Danso in and having actually a bit of squad depth, if the players can stay fit, and only playing 1 game a week, we should really be able to at least get towards the final in this. Anything can happen in these one-off games. Or I guess that they're 2 games in the knockout stages, but anything can happen. And people are saying, I really hope we avoid Lazio. I really hope we've got to play these teams. We're going to have to play these teams if we want to get to the final, and it's time for us to stop being scared. And that's not just the fans, that's the players and the club themselves as well.
And then Ryan Trustain saying, when we don't win the Europa League and finish bottom half, does Ange go? I think if he were to get knocked out by AZ, I think that might actually wonder if that would make the board maybe flinch a little bit, because that's just probably unacceptable. But if he were to get as far as a final, Ryan, I think the board are going to try to continue with this Postecoglou project. I think they really believe in it, unless they see something that's so just poor and so out of character, maybe, or just so ridiculous that they just wonder, okay, is this guy actually capable of delivering against top level sides? I think if you were to lose to AZ, that would make me question it. I think that would also make the board question it, because he should be able to get past them, as well as probably the opponent after that. But, from then on, I'm not too sure. I think the board really believe in him personally, Ryan. As much as I know that pains you to hear. Ben Francis saying, with Bentancur entering contract extension talks, seeing brilliant as number 8 squad rotation player, do you think we will go with Gray as number 6 and bring in another destroyer number 6? Also with Bentancur potentially signing a new contract. What does this mean for Donley? I don't think it has any impact on Donley, man. I think very, very different positions there. But Dave, you sort of answered some parts of it, but if there's maybe a part of this that Ben Francis is adding to that maybe we didn't answer earlier.
Yeah, no, look, I think you can go 2 ways. You can push Bentancur forward as a number 8, which you can argue he can't play. We sort of played that role in the Antonio Conte system. Between him and Højbjerg, he was the one task getting further forward. Or if you see him as a number 6, then you go and buy another sort of number 8 moving forward or whatever, But look, I agree with Jack. I don't think it has any impact on Donny. I think it more has impact on Yves Bissouma, to be honest with you, Ben. But yeah, interesting. Look, it can go either way with Bentancur. I don't really mind, as long as they just bring in another midfielder and replace Bissouma with an adequate midfielder. I don't want to see us bring in another youngster and have to sit there and wait for him to be developed and stuff like that, We've already got enough of them around the club.
Well, everybody, thanks for sending in those members' questions. Plenty of them. So thanks for gauging the interest and also showing people what they're missing in case they want to get their questions answered at the end of the show. Thanks as well to Super Spurs TV, Paul Connor, Stateside Footy, Rob Wallace, gifting out all the memberships, celebrating the membership milestones as well. Thank you, guys. And by the way, there was a members preview earlier for the massive Man City game tomorrow. And of course, we're looking to try to improve on the members' content, but we're always looking to find new ways to deliver for you guys in that department. So consider becoming one. But Dave, I think we'll wrap up the show there. Sam, thank you, sir. Giving up plenty of time this evening for us, rushing home as well as you usually do. Luckily, unlike Johnny, maybe you don't have, an angry missus or anything, that's going to be screaming at you. But thanks for rushing over. Thanks for making the show possible, Sam.
Yeah, no worries. Obviously, I know Tuesdays and Wednesdays are our days, so I mentally prepare myself all day, and I have a big lunch. I've got a story to do with you, Dave. I do have a steak dinner this evening.
Well,
and I am looking forward to eating that. But I love talking Spurs with you guys, and I love most of the chat. I'll give you a quick one for Man City. I think we'll do them 2-1. I think it will be a cagey game, but I think we'll get over the hurdle of Man City. We'll make it 4 in a row. So come on, you Spurs.
That would be nice. I mean, that's the aim of the game tomorrow. And even another 4-1 would be absolutely brilliant. I'd lose my mind. But no, look, Sam, again, like Jack, really appreciate you giving up your time, people. This is Sam's Twitter. Make sure you get over, follow him. And, if there's anything you disagree with him, make sure you go out, you get in contact with him through Twitter and let him know. Or anything you agree with him, let him know. But guys, that's it from us. We will see you back here tomorrow. All your usual game day activity, your predicted lineup will be out first, followed by your pre-match build-up starting at 4:30 ahead of the big kickoff at 7:30 tomorrow. Thank you to everybody at home for tuning in as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you to Jonny as well. His missus is in a wheelchair at the minute. She had a fall, so he's got a lot of caring to do. He's got a lot going on, so I really appreciate him giving up his time as well. Run them likes up, guys. Stay safe. Just quickly, I also do have a steak dinner. The missus just waving some steaks at me. I'm having steak, mash, and veg. So that's going to be a meal of champions, topped off with peppercorn sauce. And I will rate it and let you know tomorrow in the pre-match build-up how it goes. So, guys, see you then. As always, come on, you Spurs. In the big hands we trust. We never stop, baby.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.